Shabbat Shalom. And Shana Tova. Weird. You might be thinking it's a long ways away from the high holidays. But these days, it actually feels like there are a lot of New Years to celebrate. Fooled you. This past week, as many of us know, billions of people around the world marked the Lunar New Year, ushering in the year of the rabbit. As usual, the Lunar New Year came right on the heels of the new Gregorian year on January 1st. And on top of those two big New Years, I'm guessing that you're all decorating your homes for yet another New Year coming up next week, Tu B'Shvat on Sunday night. Still time to go out and get gardening tools or carob or whatever else you use to observe this holiday. And with all these New Years going on, Shana Tova seems like an appropriate, universal way to greet one another during this season. According to the Mishnah, the Jews have no less than 4 New Years. Rosh Hashanah, the first of Tishrei, which is the most famous, referring to the autumn day on which the world was created. Tu B'Shvat, coming up next week, is the New Year for the trees. There's also the first of Nisan, the New Year of Kings, when we approach Passover. And finally, the first of Elul, which is the New Year for tithing cattle. You missed that one, Beverly? I noticed that no one sent me any cards for that one this year, but there's always next. Like most aspects of Jewish life, our calendar is complicated. And 4 New Years is just the beginning. We've got dozens of holidays and a complex system of calibrating the lunar and solar years. And of course, we overlay that with the weekly cycle of Shabbat. We also punctuate time with the personal and collective time cycles of memory, remembering loved ones on their yahrzeits, as we do this week with the 11th yahrzeit of Debbie Friedman, reminding us of the revolutionary impact she had on Jewish music and prayer. And, along similar lines, today, the 27th of January, is, as we've said, a different day of memory. It is International Holocaust Remembrance Day, which the United Nations designated to honor the day on which Auschwitz was liberated in 1945. This day, along with Yom HaShoah and the anniversary of Kristallnacht, beckons us to pause for a moment and remember. Marking time in all these various ways tethers us to one another and to an eternal collective of the Jewish people. More than anything else we do, more than eating in a Jewish way or voting in a Jewish way, even more than learning in a Jewish way, it's by marking time as Jews that we most deeply assert our role in and commitment to this people. Turning to yet another system of marking time, that is the weekly Torah cycle, Parashat Bo this week gives us the locus classicus for what it means to mark time Jewishly. In Exodus 12, we read, HaChodesh hazeh lachem rosh chodashim, rishon hu lachem lechodshei hashana. This month shall mark for you the beginning of the months. It shall be the first of the months of the year for you. And with that commandment, the Jewish calendar was born. This is, in fact, the very first mitzvah that the Israelites receive collectively. A new, separate calendar is so important that it actually comes up before any other commandment. As the people are getting ready to leave Egypt, once the plagues are over and Pharaoh offers his begrudging assent, even before they actually leave the land, God insists that the Israelites should institute a new way of organizing time. One reason why is that God is about to tell them that when they leave Egypt, they should commemorate their exodus every year, which necessitates the establishment of a calendar on which to do so. But of course, that practical explanation is not enough for our commentators. Ovadia Sforno points out that when the people were enslaved, their days, hours, and minutes were always at the whim of their taskmasters. Truly being free, he says, requires setting your own schedule. This may be the most rabbinic or most relatable rabbinic hot take of all. Many of us understand how liberating it can be to be in charge of our own time. And surely this is one reason why the Exodus is paired with a brand new calendar. Ramban Nachmanides offers a different approach, pointing out that the Torah expects Jews to count their months in relation to the Exodus. Just as they count days as we count days in relation to Shabbat, Yom Rishon, Yom Sheni, etc., the first day, the second day, and so on, numbering the days until, or rather since the last Shabbat, Jews are to count their months in relation to the anniversary of their freedom. For this reason, he explains, the months we recognize today as Shvat or Adar and so on, these names actually don't appear in the Torah. When you actually read of holidays that are referenced in the Torah, you don't hear the names that we recognize today. Instead, when we read the Torah, the months are framed numerically. The first month, the seventh month, and so on. Each of these months is supposed to keep track of time on a plane of liberation. And the purpose of the calendar, according to him, is not only to remember our history, but to embody it throughout time, always in relation to that liberation from slavery in Egypt. Now, to get a little deeper, because I loved reading this week, you may know already that the names of the months that we have in the calendar we recognize follow the names of Babylonian months or Babylonian gods. Shavatu, Adaru, Nisanu sound a lot like Shvat, Adar, and Nisan. Ramban argues that the reason why we've retained these Babylonian names for our months is so that with each month we'll count time in relation to God delivering us from Babylonian exile. Do with that what you will. Maybe you like that idea, maybe you don't. But either way you slice it, Ramban is trying to say that however we understand our months, be it numerically in reference to the Exodus, or with Babylonian names in reference to our exile, we're supposed to see our past and our future within the annual calendar with which we live our present. Lest we feel like the months drag on in perpetuity, actually, there is always a reenactment of sorts, a kind of cycle or a conversation between our present and our pasts that continues on and on and on for us as Jews. Pointing to a similar set of classical texts, NYU professor Jeffrey Rubenstein notes that our holidays serve not merely as remembrances of Jewish history, but as the script of a cyclical drama that plays out each year. Every single thing that happens in the Jewish calendar locates us in relationship to our past and to each other. And it allows us to reinsert ourselves into the Jewish story at various moments throughout the year. For this reason, Jews over the past 2,000 years have ascribed countless communal tragedies to Tisha B'Av. Medieval crusades and early modern pogroms are all commemorated on Tisha B'Av, not because they literally happened on that date, but because the mythic feeling attached to it corresponded to the emotional drama on the Jewish calendar. We might say, therefore, that the Jewish calendar is not merely about remembering certain events, but locating ourselves temporally in relation to the ever-unfolding story of the Jewish people, especially as it relates to our emotional selves. Inevitably, we all live according to many different calendars. We've got the school year, the fiscal year, the lunar year, perhaps, and of course, the secular Gregorian year that puts us in relationship to the rest of the world. But distinct from all those, only the Jewish year allows us to locate our emotions, our relationships, our aspirations in relation to a cyclical drama in conversation with our people's past. The Jewish calendar is one of the things we have in common with all Jews across time and space and denomination. If there is such a thing as the Jewish story at all, the rhythm of Jewish time is what keeps each character progressing toward a shared destiny. Echad Ha'am famously wrote that more than the Jewish people has kept Shabbat, Shabbat has kept the Jewish people. so too does the broader expression of Jewish time keep us in sync with the Jewish story. Shabbat Shalom.